Alright, this is part 4 of our series on factoring polynomials. So we will continue our work. We are at this point factoring trinomials. We've already done all of these problems on previous videos, and we're about to pick up here and do these last several problems. Okay, so all of these are factoring trinomials. Always start by asking yourself, is there a common factor? No. So we can go ahead and start factoring this as a binomial times a binomial. We will start with the first term, 4x squared. Now be careful, this is not prime. There are two ways that I could factor 4. It's either going to be 2 times 2, or it could be 1 times 4. So do not assume that's going to be 4x and x. In fact, I usually like to start with the smaller number. So I'm going to start with 2x and 2x and see how that goes. Alright, skip over the 12 for now and focus on the 5. 5 can only be factored one way. 1 times 5. It's a prime number. So let's check that out. Now, the inner plus the outer must equal the middle. The inner, this is the inner. 1 times 2x. So inner, I have 2x. These are the outer. 2x times 5. So that's 10x. Now, the middle to which I refer is this, positive 12x. So the inner plus the outer must equal this middle. Is there a way that I can get positive 12x out of this if I choose the signs right? Well, sure, if we just leave them both positive, that will make positive 12x. So that would mean both of these are positive. Now, one thing we must check before we declare victory, we have to make sure we have the correct sign on the constant. Positive 1 times positive 5 does equal positive 5. Which means this is in fact the answer. Okay, number 20. Yeah, we definitely have a common factor here. So all of these numbers are divisible by 3. Let's see, I'll go purple with it. So 3 is going to be the greatest common factor as far as the numbers go. Now, variable wise, it's always going to be the lower amount. So this last term only has 1x. So all of the terms have at least 1x. So my GCF is 3x. Alright, so we have to start by pulling that out. Then we'll make one set of parentheses big enough for a trinomial. To figure out what goes inside of there, we're going to take our GCF and divide everything by that. So we're going to divide by 3x everywhere. Okay. These 3's just cancel out. This x is going to cancel out one of these x's and leave x squared. 24 divided by 3 is 8, so minus 8. This x is going to cancel out one of these x's and just leave x. 48 divided by 3 is 16. And these x's are going to cancel out. So now we can go ahead and factor this trinomial. Let's keep the common factor out front. Let's bring that down. But we can go ahead and start to factor this as our binomial times a binomial. We start with the x squared. That will factor as x times x. We'll have to be careful with the 16. 16 could be 4 times 4. Or it could be 2 times 8. Or it could be 1 times 16. So there are 3 possibilities. Because the leading coefficient is 1, I can immediately look among these options looking for 8. So for that reason, I'm liking the 4 and 4 because 4 plus 4 is 8. So let's use that. Okay, so let's go with looking at 16, 4 times 4. Now, the inner plus the outer must equal the middle. Inner, I have 4x. Outer, again I have 4x. Okay? So I need to get a middle of negative 8x. So how can I choose the signs to get a negative 8x out of this? Yeah, if I make them both negative, negative 4 and negative 4 would make negative 8x. So that means both of these would be negative. So last thing we have to check and make sure we're getting the correct sign on the constant. Negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. A negative times a negative is positive. So this works out great. So that means that this is the answer. Okay, number 21. Always ask yourself first, is there a common factor? Well, no, there is no common factor here. So in that case, we can go ahead and do our binomial times a binomial, factorization. X squared can only be x times x. Then we look at the 20. 20 has a couple of options. It could be 4 times 5. Or it could be 2 times 10. Or it could be 1 times 20. So we have 3 possibilities. Now, the inner plus the outer must equal the middle. The middle is 1x. So because the leading coefficient is 1, we can just immediately start to look for which one of these pairs we can get a 1 out of. And it's this pair. Because 5 minus 4 is 1, this is going to work out great. Okay, so we'll go with the 4 times 5 option. Now, inner, I have 4x. Outer, I have 5x. I'm trying to get positive 1. So how can I choose the signs so that I can get a positive 1, x? Yeah, if I have a negative 4x and a positive 5x, that will make positive 1x. So negative 4, there's my negative 4. Positive 5, there's my positive 5. We always have to check one more thing. Are we getting the negative 20? Negative 4 times positive 5 is negative 20. The signs are correct, which means this is the answer. Number 22. Is there a common factor? No. So that means we can go straight to binomial times a binomial. Start with the 3x squared. That can only factor as 3x times x. Next, jump to the 21. There are 2 possibilities as you look at the 21. It's either going to be 3 times 7, or it's going to be 1 times 21. Those are the possibilities. Let's start with the 3 times 7. Notice, because there is a leading coefficient of 3, because there's a number here, we cannot immediately look for the 2. Hold on. We can't just look at these numbers and ask ourselves which one of these pairs can I get a 2 out of. That only works when there's no number in front. That only works when the leading coefficient is 1. So, inner plus outer must equal the middle. I'm going to go with the 3 times 7, but let me mention to you a shortcut, because it matters whether I do 7 times 3 as opposed to 3 times 7. But I know that one of those 2 choices is automatically impossible. Alright? I know that it will not work, and I would not waste my time on it. So here's what I'm talking about. This option with the 3 here will not work. I already know it without even checking the inner, outer, middle thing. Here's why. See these 3's? inside the parentheses, there should never be a common factor. If the original problem didn't have a common factor, then you shouldn't have any common factors inside the parentheses either. Okay, so if 3 times 7 is going to work, it has to be 7 times 3 in that order. Alright, so by eliminating some of these choices, it makes the process go much faster. So it's all about the tricks. Now, inner plus outer equals middle. Inner, I have 7x. Outer, I have 9x. I'm multiplying. Okay. And inner plus outer must equal the middle, the 2x. Is there a way I can get a positive 2x out of this if I pick the signs right? Sure, if I make this a negative 7 and I make this a positive 9, that will give me a positive 2x. So negative 7, there's my negative 7. Positive 9 will come from this 3 being positive because that's the outer. We have to check one last thing. Are we getting negative 21? Well, negative 7 times positive 3 is negative 21. So it checks out, which means that this is the answer. Okay? Alright, number 23. Is there a common factor? Always look for that first. Nope. So we can go ahead and start doing our binomial times binomial factorization. Start with the 2x squared. That can only factor as 2x times x. Well, then look at the 3. 3 is a prime number, so that can only factor as 1 and 3. So it matters whether I put the 1 here and the 3 here or the other way around. Let's just try it this way first and see what happens. Inner plus outer equals middle. What I mean is the inner is the 1x. I am multiplying, so that's 1x. The outer is 6x. I am multiplying. Now, the middle to which I refer is this positive 5x. Okay, so the inner plus the outer must equal this middle. Is there a way that I can get positive 5x out of this if I pick the signs right? Well, yes, if I make this a negative 1 and I make this a positive 6, that will make a positive 5 middle. So there's my negative 1, and this will make positive 6. One last thing to check. Are we getting a negative 3? Well, negative 1 times positive 3 is a negative 3. So that worked out great. So that means that this is the answer. Okay? Alright. Look at number 24. Be very careful. The first thing you always have to ask yourself is there a common factor? What is the greatest common factor? In this case, the greatest common factor is 2. All of these are divisible by 2. So we need to pull that out first before we do anything else. So greatest common factor of 2, make one pair of parentheses big enough for a trinomial. Now take your common factor and divide with it. Okay, so it's dividing everything by 2. So that's going to make 3x squared plus 14x plus 15. Okay, so this is the trinomial that we will begin to factor. Alright, as a binomial times a binomial. Make sure you bring down your common factor in the front. So let's go ahead and start with the 3x squared. 3x squared will only factor as 3x times x. Okay, now we jump over, ignore the 14x, look at the 15. There are two ways to factor 15. It's either going to be 3 times 5 or 1 times 15. Now, you might be tempted to use the 1 times 15 because you see the 14, and in other problems we've seen that if we can make a 14 out of a pair of numbers, then those are the ones we use. But we only think that way when the leading coefficient is 1, when there's no number sitting here. The fact that 15 minus 1 is 14, that doesn't help us if there's a 3 here. So I'm actually going to start with the 3 and the 5. I always start with the smaller numbers and work my way up. Now, it matters whether if I do 3 here and 5 here, or the other way around. Now, let me mention again a shortcut. I know that putting 3 here will not work. And I'm not even going to try it because that would be a waste of time. Now, the reason why I know that this will not work in this order is because of these numbers right here, 3 and 3. These have a common factor, all right? They're both obviously divisible by 3. Now, if the previous trinomial here had no common factors, then the parentheses, there should be no common factors inside of the parentheses. So the beauty of that is you get to throw out some of your options, and the process becomes much quicker because you won't waste time on putting a 3 and a 5. You will immediately go to 5 and 3. And if this doesn't work, then we'll just throw it out and go with the 1 and 15. Okay, I'm trying to teach you guys the tricks. Inner plus outer equals middle. Inner, I have 5x. Okay, this is inner. That's 5x. Outer, I have 9x. I am multiplying. Okay, I am trying to get a middle, alright, when I say inner plus outer equals middle. The middle to which I refer is this positive 14x. Is there a way that I can get a positive 14x out of this if I pick the signs right? Well, of course, if I just let them both be positive, that adds up to positive 14x. So that means both of these would be positive. We always have to check one last thing. Are we getting the correct sign on the constant? And yes, a positive times a positive is a positive. So that's great. That means that this is, in fact, the answer. Alright, does this have a common factor? No. So, since it does not have a common factor, we can go ahead and start our binomial times a binomial. Start with your 3x squared. 3x squared can only factor as 3x times x. Alright, ignore the 28 for now. Look at the 9. 9 has two ways to factor. It's either going to be 3 times 3 or 1 times 9. Normally I would start with the 3 times 3. But now here's a time-saving trick. I've mentioned this before if you've been watching this video. But just in case you skip straight to number 25. I know that this is not going to work because if there's no common factor in the original problem, there should be no common factor inside the parentheses. Alright, so with 3 and 3, there's no way to avoid having a 3 here, and that would create a common factor. So I'm not going to waste my time on it. I automatically know that 3 times 3 is not going to work. So that makes the process much quicker if you ignore the ones that create a common factor. So go straight to 1 times 9. Now it matters whether we put the 1 here or if we put the 1 here. Let's try it out this way and see what happens. Now the inner plus the outer must equal the middle. The inner is 1x. the outer, I am multiplying. So the outer is 27x. Now, when I say inner plus outer equals middle, this is the middle to which I refer. So somehow this 1x and 27x has to make negative 28x. Is there a way that I could choose the signs so that I can get a negative 28x out of these two, the inner and the outer? Well, yes. If I make both of these negative, that will add up to negative 28x. So that would mean both of these would be negative. Now, there's one last thing that we always must check. We've got to check the sign on the constant. Alright, does negative 1 times negative 9 give you positive 9? Well, yes, a negative times a negative is a positive. So that works out great. That means that this is, in fact, the answer. Alright, this was the longest homework I've ever given. Too long, I think, actually. I didn't create this assignment, in case you're wondering why I gave it if it was too long. And we all have to give the same homework, so I had no choice in the matter. Anyway, is there a common factor? No, there is no common factor. So that means we can go straight to our binomial times a binomial factorization. Now, be careful. We start with the 6x squared. Alright, I'm saying be careful because this is not a prime number. So don't assume it's going to be 6x and x. There are two ways that this could be factored. It might be 2 times 3, or it could be 1 times 6. Okay? So I'm actually going to start with the smaller numbers first. I always start with the smaller numbers first, because they are more often lead to the answer for some reason. So I will start with 2x and 3x. If this doesn't work, then I'll go back and do the 1 and the 6. Alright, next we skip over the 5x for now, and we look at the 4. Okay, again, there's two ways to factor 4. It's either going to be 2 times 2 or 1 times 4. Okay? It might be tempting to assume because 4 plus 1 is 5, and later we're going to be looking for this 5x, you might think that that's going to automatically be the answer. And it might be, but it really is meaningless at this point, because when there's a number in front, you can't just look for the sum immediately. You have to go by inner plus outer equals middle. Okay, so normally I would start with the 2 times 2. Okay, but again, a time-saving trick I really want you guys to know is I know immediately that 2 times 2 is not going to work. And here's how I know. If I do 2 times 2, then that's creating a common factor inside of these parentheses. And if there was no common factor in the original problem, there will be no common factor inside the parentheses either. So 2 times 2 cannot lead to the answer. So don't waste your time on it. So that means we have to deal with the 1 and the 4. Okay. Again, it matters whether I put the 1 here and the 4 here or the other way around. But I know that one of those cannot be the answer. And here's the one that I will not waste my time on. If I put it this way, 4 times 1. Again, that would create a common factor. Both of these are divisible by 2. So don't waste your time on options that involve a GCF. Instead, you will save time by skipping those and going straight to the other option, 1 and 4. So if this is going to work at all, it has to be this way. So let's check it out and see. Inner plus outer equals middle. Inner, I have 3x. Outer, I have 8x. I am multiplying. 8x. The middle is 5x. So inner plus outer has to equal the middle. Now, is there a way I can pick the signs to give me positive 5? Yes. If I do a negative 3x and a positive 8x, that will give me a positive 5x. Okay, so I will get the negative 3x is my inner, so that comes from this being negative. That would make negative 3x. If I put my positive here on the 4, that's for my outer. Okay, positive 4 times positive 2 will make the positive 8 that I wanted. So the signs would have to be like this. There's one last thing we always have to check. We need to check the sign on the constant and make sure we're getting it. A negative times a positive is a negative. So that's great. So that means that this is the answer. Okay, that is the end of this lesson. I really hope these videos are helpful to you guys, and I will see you on the next video.